friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Natalia Leigh. I'm an indie author and freelance editor, and today I'm pretty excited for the video because I'm going to be giving you some of my tips for writing historical fiction. If you didn't already know, my new book, Pistol Daisy, which is coming out June 9th, is considered historical fiction. It takes place in 1880 in the Wild West in the dusty plains of Colorado, and this was my first attempt at writing historical fiction. I had no idea what I was doing, and I think writing is always a journey, it's always a process, there's always more to learn. So I do have 8 tips for you today, but keep in mind that I am going to continue learning, I'm going to continue writing the Pistol Daisy series, and hopefully here in a year or two, you know, when I've written some more historical fiction, maybe I will have some more tips for you. But for today, I do have 8 tips. I also have some tea here. I got my May SIBSBY box, so I selected the strawberry tea for today. It's so good, it smells delicious. We have some rain coming in, so I'm just drinking my strawberry tea, and I'm going to share some historical fiction tips with you. Also, keep in mind, if you'd like to get your own SIBSBY tea box, I do have a code down below. Just go to the link, put in my code, and I think you'll get $5 off of your first SIBSBY order. So get on that too. Okay, tip number 1 when writing historical fiction is to not let it overwhelm you. And I say this because I got incredibly overwhelmed when I first started writing Pistol Daisy. I had no idea what I was doing. I was so afraid that I was going to mess up the time period or that I was going to write things wrong that it almost felt paralyzing in a way, just because I was like, I never lived in the Wild West. I don't know what the Wild West was like. And I was really scared. But as I just took it kind of one step at a time, that overwhelm slowly melted away. So just know that you will figure it out, even if you know nothing about the time period that you really want to write in. Maybe you've just seen like a couple movies or something and it's like a time period that fascinates you and you know not a darn thing. It's okay. Don't get overwhelmed. These tips I think will help you to tackle the historical time period that you want to write about. Okay, tip number 2 is to take your time. Researching and writing historical fiction is not something that should be rushed, and oh, did I learn this. I am the type of person who likes to do I used to be the type of writer who would like get an idea, do a super like messy outline, get as much down as I could, and then just start writing. And even being a plotter, like even having an outline that I sat down and wrote, let me tell you, with historical fiction, that for me was like shooting myself in the foot because I didn't do my research beforehand and I rushed it, and then I had to go back and really rework a lot of stuff that was incorrect, like historically incorrect to that time period. So don't rush yourself, just take your time and try to have a good time while you're doing it, because I have a feeling that you're going to be researching for a while. So instead of getting overwhelmed and frustrated and trying to rush through it, pour yourself a cup of tea and just sit back and relax while researching your time period of choice. Okay, tip number 3 is to keep all of your notes in one place. This is also something that I struggled with. I would do all this research and I would write notes down in so many different places that I was never able to come back to those notes and quickly find them and look over them. So I would have them on sticky notes, I'd have them written in notebooks and journals, I would have them typed into my phone, I would have them, where else did I have them? I would use like the comment function on Word and just pop little comments into my like documents. It was a mess and my things were everywhere, and Since then, since having that entire mess and having to go through all of it, I have actually created a series Bible. I will have my series Bible video linked down below. So if you do not know what a series Bible is, it's essentially either like a journal or a notebook or a binder, or in my case, it's actually a program on my computer where I keep all of my information. Not only do I have my character information there, all of my setting information, my research, I have everything compiled into that series Bible so that whenever I have to go and find something, whenever I think of something clever that I want to add to the story later on, whenever I, do some more research and I want to add an authentic detail to the story, like the series Bible is where I put all of that. So I highly recommend that you have a series Bible. If you don't already have one and you want to know what I use, I am using a CAMPFIRE software, and CAMPFIRE is actually sponsoring today's video. Thank you, CAMPFIRE. I really appreciate you. So if you guys didn't already know, CAMPFIRE Pro is a writing software that has a ton of tools to help you stay really organized and focused on your project. CAMPFIRE's character pages will help you keep track of all your characters with their details and their backstories, which has been incredibly important for me and for Pistol Daisy, because I had to go back and totally restructure the backstories of a bunch of characters, and it actually led to the final version of Pistol Daisy, which is what comes out on June 9th. But in addition to the character sheets, there are also timelines that can help you kind of hammer out details and keep everything super organized. You can work on character arcs. There is even a world building pack for those of you who, especially for people who are writing fantasy. The world building pack can definitely be used for historical fiction as well, because again, historical fiction happens in a different time period than the one that we're currently living in. There are a bunch of details and little things to remember, so you could absolutely use the world building pack for your historical fiction, but I highly recommend it for fantasy and if you are building all of your own worlds, because you can develop cultures, languages, religions, magic systems, belief systems, etc. So if you want to check out CAMPFIRE, I do have a link down below. Make sure to let them know that Natalia Leigh sent you over there, and again, CAMPFIRE, thank you so much for sponsoring today's video. Okay, tip number 4 when you are writing historical fiction is to take another sip of your tea. Tip number 4 is to head to the library and check out books on your time period. Now, I grew up in the time of the internet. I use the internet and the computer for everything, but going to the library and physically checking out books about your time period, there is something that feels so like heartwarming about that. I don't know what it is, but when I needed to do research for Pistol Daisy, I could sit on the computer all day long doing research, but it doesn't feel as like authentic sometimes as just going to the library and picking up some books on that time period, because the people who wrote those books, they have backgrounds probably in like anthropology or historical studies. They know what they're talking about, and I feel like it's really good information in books. And in addition to that, you have this big stack of books. You can bring it home with you. You can like cuddle up in bed and read the books, or if it's summer like it is here right now, you can sit outside on the porch with your tea or with your margarita or whatever you're drinking and just do your research that way. Step away from the computer, and I love the feeling of that. And when I was doing research for Pistol Daisy, I had a ton of books. I had books on like weapons of the 1800s, like the Civil War. I had books on what else? Like wagon trains and wagon trails and the way that they dressed and what they ate. Like I studied everything because I wanted Pistol Daisy to feel as authentic as possible. And when I was reading, I had like all my sticky notes out and I filled those books, all the books, I filled them up with sticky notes, but it was so like fulfilling to see all of those books totally like filled to the brim with sticky notes. And when ultimately I had to take those books back to the library so that somebody else could read them, I took all of those sticky notes out and I transported all of that research and all of those details into my CAMPFIRE document so that I had somewhere that I was not ever going to lose them. And I'm not going to, because you will see so many spoilers if I pull up that document. Maybe after the whole series is out, I'll show you my CAMPFIRE series Bible for Pistol Daisy. But anyway, if I were to pull it up, I have all of these little details in my CAMPFIRE document so that I can always go back. I can always remember like, oh, what was the name of that gun? How did this gun work? What did they actually eat when they were out on the trails for weeks at a time? Like I can always go back and find that information because I did my research and I compiled it all in one spot. So if you can, head to the library. Spend like, an afternoon going to the library and getting yourself some books, and then buy yourself some sticky notes because you're probably gonna need them. Okay, now I'm going to start getting into some like specific tips about researching and how I went about researching the like late 1800s and even the like early 1900s and early 1800s too, because I wanted to know about like the entire century that I was kind of working with. Tip number 5 is to start by researching the time period and major events that happened within that time period. So I'm talking about any wars that were going on, political leaders, presidents, natural disasters that may have affected people living in this time period and kind of the setting that you're writing about. So for Pistol Daisy, it does take place in 1880, and when I wrote the first draft, it's like I completely forgot that the Civil War was even a thing. So when I went back to all my details and all my research and I remembered, oh my gosh, Civil War took place from 1861 to 1865, I realized that it was really important to tie in some details of that time period. Daisy was born in 1861. So Daisy was alive when the Civil War was happening, but she was very young. So of course she didn't really understand the impact of the Civil War when she was a child, but of course the older people in her family all had a very kind of intimate relationship with the Civil War, and it had an impact on their lives. And I completely missed that in the first draft. So that's something that I had to really go back, research it again, and figure out, okay, if Daisy was born in 1861, how would the Civil War have affected her? How would it have affected her family? How would it, have affected the people that she was living around, the people that she's traveling with? Like, how did it impact this entire, state of Colorado? And I had to kind of start from a perspective that's pulled back a little bit. So the Civil War is a big thing that happened in that time period versus, zooming all the way into, oh my gosh, what type of underwear did people wear in the time? Like, what type of hats did people wear? So start from a very kind of general, broad view of the time period, figure out all the major events so that you're not missing something like I did and like missing a major war or like a major natural disaster that would have undoubtedly affected your characters in that time period. All right, tip number 6 is to not feel like it has to be absolutely perfect. This contributed to my feelings of overwhelm when I was starting to research the time period and starting to write Pistol Daisy. I am having a lot of glare in my glasses today. Know that it doesn't have to be perfect. Now, there are always going to be readers who, have studied the time period that you're writing about or know the time period pretty well. And there will be readers who are going to be able to pick out if anything is like historically inaccurate, but the majority of readers are not going to be able to pick out the teeny tiny inaccurate details within your historical fiction. So my approach to it has been to do the best I can, but to know that it's not going to be perfect. There is no way I can write 1880s in the Wild West absolutely 100% perfect. And if I try to do that, my brain is going to explode because there's just so much to know about every single time period, especially if you're writing about a time period that is kind of in the distant past, and it's even more difficult to find like literature or like historians that talk about it. So do the best that you can. And kind of my tip for this is to find as many like tiny accurate details as you can and use those details to bring the story to life. Because I have found, both through writing historical fiction and through reading historical fiction, because I do enjoy reading historical fiction, it tends to be the small details that really pull me into the story and kind of convince me that the author knows the time period and knows the historical period that they're working within. Little details like, again, the clothing, what type of fabric is the clothing made out of? What are the characters eating? What type of technology do they have in their homes? Do they have plumbing? Do they have electricity? Like, knowing these little details and weaving these details into your story can bring that historical time period to life without you needing to know every single little thing about the time period, because in my case at least, I don't think that's realistic, and there's no way I can know every single little thing about the time period. But if you're doing your research, you are researching all those, broader, like major historical events, and then you're finding those fun, super authentic and accurate details that you can weave through your narrative. That is really going to help bring that historical time period to life and suck your readers in and convince them that they are in that time period and that you know what you're talking about. So don't strive for perfection, because it will probably evade you and drive you crazy in the meantime. All right, this next one is fun. Tip number 7 is to think about how your characters would speak. We speak differently now than we did 50 years ago, than we did 100 years ago or 200 years ago. How we speak changes over the years. It changes from place to place. So for example, again, I'm going to keep bringing up Pistol Daisy because this is where my experience lies. With Pistol Daisy, my characters speak with contractions. They have a very casual way of speaking. They use kind of like a lazy Wild West slang, and that is totally to be expected of that time period in this area of the world. 1880s in the Wild West, you're going to hear characters speaking differently than if we were in like 1880s England or even like 1880s East Coast in the United States. So you need to know not only the time period, but also the setting, how advanced is that culture, how formal are they, how, I don't want to say that, I don't want to say like how rigid and uptight are they, that's not the right way to put it. But by doing a bit of research and finding out how your characters would speak or how the people around them would speak, again, that is going to help bring your story to life. And another part of this, I don't know if this is something you guys are interested in, but I am always interested in the history of words. I love words. I'm an editor. I am obsessed with words. If you need an editor, check out enchantedinkpublishing.com, by the way. Just a little plug there, but I love words. And while I was writing Pistol Daisy, but especially when I was editing Pistol Daisy, if I came across any words that I felt sounded a little bit too modern, I would actually look up the history of the word and find out when that word first landed in the dictionary, when there was first known like record of that word being used. So if I was using a word and I went to the history of it, and the first known use of that word was in like 1950, and I'm writing about 1880, then my personal preference is to take that word and replace it with a word that was around in the 1880s that people would have realistically used. So this dives even deeper into bringing the story to life, because you're really making sure that the words you're using and the voice that you're telling the story with are as authentic to the times as possible. And I know that some of you out there are not going to be interested in the history of words or when words came to be or how they came to be, but do your research on those words, kind of find out when they came into being, when they were being used more casually in speech in the time period. And if you need to, take those modern words and replace them with something that is more historically accurate. Tip number 8 is to try to have fun with it. And I know this is not like a specific tip of how to do your research or tips for research, but I think one of the most difficult things about writing historical fiction is feeling overwhelmed and feeling like you have no idea what the heck is going on, and then not wanting to try anymore because you just feel so overwhelmed. At first, when I started researching for Pistol Daisy, like I've said like 20 times, I did feel stressed out and overwhelmed and was like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to figure out this time period? But the more time you spend in that world, the more research that you do, even casual research along the way. Like if you do your heavy research before you start writing, and then along the way, as you're doing multiple drafts, multiple rounds of revision, you're just kind of like doing a little bit of research on the side and pulling in a little bit more details, it starts to feel like a comfortable place. It starts to feel like you belong there almost. And I've actually come to realize that even though doing all this research and learning about the late 1800s was scary and like daunting at first, I absolutely love it now. Like even in my day-to-day life, I find myself kind of seeking out interesting little tidbits and facts from the past. And actually, this is kind of going off topic a little bit, but many of you probably know that Greg and I are building a camper van. It's coming along really, really well. And we plan to do like a Pistol Daisy road trip. because I live in Colorado and Pistol Daisy takes place in Colorado, and I want to do like a Wild West Pistol Daisy road trip in the Sprinter van and like document it for you and drive through all of these areas that Daisy went through on her journeys and on her adventures, because there is so much, at least for my time period, the late 1800s, like the Wild West era, there's so much to be experienced even now. I am fascinated by the time period now, and I enjoy learning about the time period because I got over the initial feelings of being intimidated and feelings of being like scared and feeling like I would never know anything about that time period. So just know that you will get there. It'll take some time. You'll probably have to read a lot of different library books. You'll have to read a bunch of stuff online, watch some YouTube videos if you can, like learn as much as you can, have a fun time with it, and try not to feel like you have to be perfect, and try not to feel like your book absolutely has to be perfect, because again, most of us don't know specific details about the past. We might have interest in different areas of the past. I love the Wild West, but I don't know much about Greek history. I don't know much about like Egyptian history, and I'm fascinated by it, and I would love to read books that kind of play off of that time period and are written in that time period. But if you could convince me with just little details from that time period, then I would be all there. Like I would be all for it, because I don't know everything about that time period, and most of your readers probably won't either. So don't feel like you have to be perfect. Don't feel like you have to get everything 100% absolutely historically accurate. Just do the best you can and have fun along the way. All right, everybody, those were my 8 tips for writing historical fiction. Again, Pistol Daisy does come out on June 9th. I am working on the sequel, which is called Whiskey City. I'm having a lot of fun working on the outline right now. I am like this close to having the outline done. So hopefully I'll be able to start working on the 3rd draft of Whiskey City very soon. I'd like to get Whiskey City out this year. I want Pistol Daisy and Whiskey City to be out this year, but we'll see. I might be, again, kind of shooting myself in the foot for that later on, but we'll just see how much I can get done. All right, everybody, so thank you so much for being here. I hope you are well. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend. Keep writing, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.